welcome back to Techiexpert. I'm Alisha Chandrakar, and today I have a very amazing personality with me whose name is Kunal Bajaj. He is the Chief Business Officer at eSec, Forte Technologies. So Kunal sir, welcome to Techiexpert and thank you so much for your precious time.
Thank you so much for having me on board.
So Kunal, I want you to explain what eSec Forte Technology is all about to our audience.
Sure. So eSec is predominantly an information security company. We focus on niche security services and solutions. As a company, we started about 10 years back. We started from a small setup in Delhi, and today we've got our headquarters in Delhi, Singapore, and Sri Lanka. We've also have our India offices across Gurgaon, Bombay, Bangalore, and Delhi. So so basically from these different setups that we've got, we offer and we cater to clients across 20 plus countries, which includes a lot of banks, telcos, defense organizations, government organizations, and then organizations which have critical infrastructure and were worried about security. About 100 plus team members, and we work across spectrum, like I said, when it comes to security.
That's really amazing. So I want to know, what was the idea behind this? What motivated you to start this company?
That's a question. What we started was with more to do around cloud services, niche app development 10 years back. But during the course, we realized that security was becoming a very growing problem across organizations. Security, to be honest, till about 5 years, 7 years back, was more of a compliance requirement, where you would report to the board that you are compliant with security requirements. But now, a lot of organizations are becoming proactive. And to be honest, we happen to be one of the most attacked countries in the world when it comes to cybersecurity. So the threat vectors are high, the anomalies are very high for us. And that's where we realized that there is a massive demand for cybersecurity, and that's where we just decided to cater to the need.
Okay, that's nice. So what are the services your company provide, and how do you differentiate yourself from other companies who provide the same services?
So that's a question we are asked quite often. So I would say we've kind of segregated ourselves into 3 different lines of businesses. One is around the assessment services and compliance, wherein what we do is we come and look at your environment, which could be your applications, which could be your public interfaces, which could be your network devices, your laptops, your servers, and we do an assessment on how secure they are. If there are any gaps, any vulnerabilities which could potentially be exploited to breach your organization. So it's like a simple recce or a simple gap assessment or a district. You might call it any of these. What also falls under this is to the compliance services. So there are certain regulatory organizations which require you to adhere to compliance. It could be compliance is specific to RBI when it comes to banks. It could be IRDA for insurance firms. It could be NISA for firms in Middle East, SAMA for firms in Saudi, HIPAA for healthcare firms in US. So depending upon what regulatory organizations guide your working, these compliances come into play. So compliance and assessment forms the first line of business. The second line of business is around the cyber forensics, wherein we work with organizations to either setting up a forensic where they can carry out forensic investigation, or B, we work with organizations as part of their incident response to breach. And let's say, God forbid, if an organization gets breached, we get called to how do you respond to that incident? How do you contain that incident?
Right.
B, what are the investigation? How do you find the brain behind this whole nuisance, and how do you control the attack? So that's the second line of business for us in this business. And third business for us is with working with solutions. We represent more than 30 partner leaders in the information security space in this part of the world. We are their professional services partners, we are the value-added partners, we distribute those solutions or we resell those solutions. So assessment compliances, forensics, and solutions are three different lines of business.
That's very amazing actually. You're into so many things. So what has so far surprised you in this industry?
I think what we are realizing, and I would call it as a pleasant surprise, is where, like I said, organizations till about 5 years back were not very wary of security. It was always an expense of the balance sheet. It was always more of a compliance requirement. Whereas today, we are seeing that CISOs who are basically the responsible personnel for security get a space in the board. They get to voice their opinion during board meetings. Organizations are, budgeting security as a very, very essential requirement for the organizations in time. Be it brand value, be it preventing them from any, cyber breaches, be it, how strong they are when it comes to cyber attacks. So that's a very pleasant paradigm shift that we are seeing in the security space, where organizations are becoming very, very wary of the need of cybersecurity.
Right. I agree with you on this. So, what are the different layers of data security based on different sectors?
Sorry, come again on that, please.
Yeah, repeat. What are the different layers of data security based on different sectors?
So it honestly depends upon the environment within the organization. I would rather than dividing it into sectors, I would call it on the way they do business. For instance, a lot of defense organizations work on a completely air-gapped network, which means there is zero interfacing with the outside world. There are no internet devices which connect onto these defense networks. Versus some banks who are partly open to remote working or remote access versus being on. So third set of organizations which are completely cloud-born. So if you see a lot of new unicorns that we are hearing and we talked about these days are completely cloud-born. So I would rather than segregating them on verticals or the type of organizations they are, I would rather categorize them on how they've chosen to build their infrastructure on. And accordingly the threats, emerge. So organizations that are completely cloud-born, they choose to be on cloud, they see benefit to scale up while being on cloud, versus organizations that are completely on-premise, have zero access or zero portion of cloud in it, have zero remote access into it, would have different kind of threat vectors. So accordingly, you have to categorize and then work with these organizations.
Right. So this question is from our audience that what do you think about the hot topic Pegasus issue in India and what are its impacts?
Oh, lovely. So we've had so many questions around Pegasus. In fact, a lot of, this is, like you said, this is apparently a very favorite question. So what I feel in my very personal and humble opinion is that, of course, there is something like Pegasus which is out there. It has been out there for quite some time. Whether what was the application of this, was it used with the right intention, was it with the wrong intention, did we have the wrong targets, is subjective, so I would not like to comment on that. But what it's done is people who were always of this opinion that this won't happen to me. I mean, security is somebody else's headache. It's not my privacy which is at stake. Or what all, what can they steal from me? What they can get access to my photos. So people were very, at an individual level, they were quite, upchill about it. And that paranoia is slightly coming into the equation. Where people at individual level have realized that they also can be thief, or there could be something sitting inside their, mobile phones already, which is pushing away their private information. So that is one change that we are seeing, which is of a mindset. Plus, we are seeing a lot of HNIs, or at least the senior leadership across organizations, who are becoming, wary of this. and they are deploying countermeasures for spyware like Pegasus. So there is an increasing demand of counter solutions which can tackle something like a Pegasus, and there is this growing demand of doing an assessment on if they've already been breached by something like a Pegasus.
Okay, that was very informative. So, what marketing strategies do you use to reach your target audience?
Sure. So I think security is a very reputation-based, requirement. We work with a lot of organizations across sectors. We acquire new logos every year, and I think the most effective way of acquiring new customers or reaching out there is through the work that you do. So we get a lot of new clients based on word of mouth, based on references that are made for us by our existing clients. So while we have a lot of we do a lot of community outreach programs, we do a lot of partner customer education programs, we participate in a lot of security exhibits. But I think the most potent and the most effective way is that when our existing customer recommends us to a potential client, and that's how we convert. That's the most efficient way of acquiring a new client.
That's amazing. So, can you share your first experience when you first deal with your very first client?
Oh, so I think the first, and this is probably outside of eSec Forte. So I used to work for a strategic consulting company in Bombay. This is almost maybe about 13 years back. And my first meeting was with one of the largest logistics companies. And for some reasons, my manager had a lot of faith in me, and he sent me for that meeting alone to handle that particular gentleman on the other side. I still remember that meeting because I was honestly beaten black and blue. What I had realized was that there was a lot to learn. There was a lot of preparation that goes into going into any meeting, whereas I took it as just another sales meeting, and I'd already been accompanying my managers, but this was probably the first time that I went alone, and I was beaten black and blue. And I think that was a great lesson to me because till date, that's something I tell my peers and my colleagues and my team members, that never go without preparation. I mean, never underestimate what's going to happen once you enter a meeting. You have to be prepared for anything that might happen.
Totally agree on this. So, during pandemic, what were the security problem your company or your clients faced that you have to take care of?
Oh wow! So I think the first wave that hit us last year was more of a surprise. Thankfully, the loss of lives was quite controlled back then, but I don't think anybody was prepared. See, honestly, when you prepare a business continuity program or a BCP program, and every organization does that, you prepare for, let's say, 10%, 15% downtime. That's the maximum that you prepare, that at a given point in time, 15% of your resources would not be available, but you would still have a functioning 85 to 90% resources available. That is the worst case scenario. But I think what hit us last year and what hit the whole world was that your resources were down to 80 to 100%. It was a complete lockdown for months. People could not access their offices. Working on desktop was not an option, and everything went remote. And we personally know so many organizations who were just not prepared for it. They had not envisaged this kind of a continuity. I know, clients who are into the process outsourcing business, BPOs and KPOs, who have a very, very strict compliance that their team members can only work from their office premises. They have such level of security, technologies that are deployed that their resources cannot work outside the office. Now imagine you are a 10,000 people call center, and you're suddenly told you cannot come to the office, and there is no provision of working remote. We know, security heads, IT heads, who were doing all the heavy lifting that time, and they were actually physically moving these desktops to the houses of each of these employees. They had to take approvals from their clients. They had to put security, tunnels, so that there is no compromise. They had to acquire newer technologies to ensure there is secured remote access, and those 3 months were a massive nightmare. I mean, the way organizations suddenly changed their business continuity program, or the definition of business continuity, was massive. I mean, we've not seen this kind of an impact on our organization's work ever. And I mean, even though second wave was more intense, sadly there was more loss of life, but at least from an infra perspective, I think organizations were prepared to work on the remote. They knew that work from home is a possibility.
Right. So it was a very challenging job in the first wave, I think. So my last question to you: what advice would you like to give to a younger generation and people who want to pursue their career in the IT field and this cybersecurity field?
This is something that, and this is a very personal advice I'd give to my friends and family also. So when we hear people talking about what is the next big thing, what is hot in the market, everybody says it is data, it is security, it is analytics, AI, ML, and that's a big driver why a lot of young people these days want to move in that direction. What I would suggest is that, of course, you need to follow what is hot, what is emerging, what you see will have a life in the next 10 years, but it is more important to follow your passion. Cybersecurity is a field of people with a lot of passion, and if you're going to jump into it only because you feel there is a strong career or there is a lot of money in it, there's a lot of fame, I would request you to consider that. Unless you're passionate about security, unless you're passionate about technology, do not jump into this. You'd not be doing justice to yourself. You won't be happy doing what cybersecurity demands. Like I said, this is a very, very intense, passionate field. People who are in love with the whole idea of technology and stuff. So that will be my one personal advice to people who plan to jump into the cybersecurity.
So that was very good advice. Actually, people need to understand that you have to follow. Your passion is different and your work is different. So thank you so much for your precious time. And audience, it's time to say goodbye to Kunal, and thank you for your precious time. And okay, one more question. What would you like to say about our Techiexpert?
So you guys are doing a phenomenal job. I think when we meet youngsters and I talk to youngsters from my college, from my family, one thing that is missing is they don't get to know what's actually happening in the real world.
Exactly.
So what they get in colleges, or what we got in our colleges, was, of course, there was a lot of theoretical yarn, but what's happening in the industry, there is a big disconnect. So like I said, people want to jump into security because they've heard from their seniors that this is a great field to get into.
Right.
But what's happening in the real world is something that somebody who's been in the industry can tell you. And I think you guys are doing a very fantastic job in connecting the two. So you're playing that platform where you're bringing folks from the industry, hear their opinions, and take it to the masses, which is I believe a great job, and you have a lot of young folks who will be thanking you for doing this.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot. So thank you, and it's time to say goodbye. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Techiexpert audience. And that's it. Thank you.
Nice talking to you. Good evening.